It's time for another edition of Talking Real Estate with Wes Davidson, and joining me in the studio this morning is the man himself. Morning, Wes.
Good morning, how are you?
Going well, thanks, mate. Now, I want to quickly touch on something that we should all be proud of. Melbourne, the most livable city yet again.
Yes, it's The Economist magazine, 2015, in the global livability rankings. I'm not sure how they determine that, but it's fifth consecutive year that Melbourne has been awarded the most livable city, so it's fantastic. It competes with things like Vienna in Austria, Vancouver and Toronto in Canada, and Adelaide came in at fifth spot. So two Australian cities in the top five is pretty good effort.
Did pretty well there to beat Adelaide, City of Churches. But something else that I noticed too, that there's a lot of foreign interest in Melbourne.
Yeah, there is, particularly from the Chinese. We have a tremendous amount of money coming in from overseas into the Melbourne market particularly. Mm-hmm. And there's a new building that's going to also go up, which is back from Singapore, and that's called Australia 108 on South Bank, and that's going to be one of the biggest residential buildings in Melbourne. And it's part of what they call the significant investor visa, where if you bring enough money, you can get into the country, and there's quite a lot of money coming into Melbourne from overseas at the present time.
Now, that can only be a good thing. Now, I want to quickly talk about buying and selling. First off, buying a deposit. Now, this is something that a lot of young families, even old families, people that just want to buy a house, a deposit is very important. Mm-hmm. Now, where is the deposit banked?
When you put your deposit down, it generally sits in a trust account. Mm-hmm. Now, that can be with the agent, it can be with the solicitor, and in some instances, it can even be with in a joint interest-bearing account, particularly when there's a long settlement or it's subject to a subdivision or something like that. But so generally speaking, it gets put into a non-interest-bearing trust account and it sits there pending settlement.
Now, a bloke like me is always told, you need 10%, you need 10%. Mm-hmm. Do you actually need 10%? Is it always required?
No, well, to get your finance, probably yes, but in terms of a contractual obligation, no, a 10% deposit is not required. It's just a convention that's happened. Okay. You can negotiate the amount of the deposit. Sometimes it will be higher, sometimes it will be less, sometimes it might be $1. Mm-hmm. And you can sometimes people use things like deposit bonds where they promise to pay the money at settlement, but they physically don't have the 10% deposit on them to pay at that point in time. So the deposit, it's not mandatory to come up with 10% straight away. Okay. You can negotiate that as long as everyone's happy with it.
So what if I sell my house? Can I access the deposit to buy another house?
You sometimes can, but not always. So you should always ask that question well ahead of time, because the 10% deposit on your house still belongs to the person who is buying your house at that point in time. It's just a promise. And you can sometimes have it released under what they call Section 27, Sale of Land Act, and that's where you give the person who has purchased your property a statement about how much you owe on the property and that there's sufficient funds to clear its settlement and so on. And if they're happy within a 28-day period of you serving that notice on them, then they have the opportunity to release that deposit to you. The agent, however, can take out his fees and charges. Mm-hmm. So you should always plan well ahead. Don't assume that you can use the 10%. Don't assume that you're going to get the full 10%. So do your planning just in case.
Well, Wes, thanks for joining us for another edition of Talking Real Estate. And if you want to find out any more, plus the prior interviews that we've done, you can head to the Wes Davidson Real Estate PRD Nationwide website, prdhorsham.com.au. Wes, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, mate. Have a good weekend.